Hello, everyone, and welcome to Radical Thinker, the place where we challenge Western media narratives and perspectives. Today is Saturday, 18th of April 2026, and we are entering day 50 of the American and Israeli war imposed on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Yesterday, on Saturday, we saw Donald Trump on a rampage, posting again and again and again on Truth Social. He is claiming that Iran has agreed to never close the Strait of Hormuz again. It will no longer be used as a weapon against the world. This is what he said. What this means, I don't know exactly that Iran would ever agree not to close the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, the Iranians are going to close it if the situation requires them to do so. It's a key strategic point for them, and they can use it to gain a lot of leverage in any open or in an asymmetrical conflict like the one that we are seeing in the past days. Donald Trump continued saying that the deal is not in any way tied to the situation in Lebanon, but that he also has plans to make Lebanon great again. Making Lebanon great again, for the people who don't understand, means to force the puppet government in Beirut to follow the path of complete normalization of relations with the state of Israel. Is not going to bring anything good for the Lebanese people. It's not going to fix their broken economy. It's not going to make the Lebanese state more independent, more steadfast, or it's not going to provide them with the means of developing an army able to protect the Lebanese borders. No, it's just means that the Americans are going to force the government in Beirut to normalize their relations with Israel and become some lap dogs of Israel. This is exactly what it means. Also, Donald Trump continued posting, and he said yesterday that the USA, together with Iran, it's in a process of removing the mines from the Strait of Hormuz, or the Strait of Iran, because this is what he said in another post. He called the Strait of Hormuz the Strait of Iran, which is not very far from the historical reality, because the area is called the Persian Gulf. So, yeah, the Hormuz Strait is more or less the Strait of Iran. I don't expect Donald Trump to have even basic knowledge of Middle Eastern geography. I don't think he has even the basic knowledge of American geography, let alone to understand where it's the Strait of Hormuz on the map. But it was funny to see him somehow recognize the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is a key strategic point for Iran, and the Strait of Hormuz, of course, has a long history with Iran for thousands of years. He continued to lash at NATO, saying that now NATO is offering some sort of help to the Americans, but that he doesn't want to accept it because he doesn't need it now when he is very close of reaching a deal with the Iranians. The delusional president also was boasting that he ended 8 wars, and if we are going to count the Iran war and now the Lebanese invasion, the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, he said that he stopped around 10 wars. It's funny for him to say this because the war with Iran, it was of his own making. So if you want to put it like this, it's a little bit strange. But what is not strange when we are talking about Donald Trump? After talking about being the best peacemaker that the humanity has ever saw, he started, of course, to threaten Cuba. He said for 70 years in waiting, it's called a new dawn for Cuba. We are going to help them out somehow, to help the Cubanese people, and we are probably expecting to see in the following weeks or months Venezuela 2.0 scenario unfolding in Cuba, because unfortunately the Cubanese really don't have military means to protect themselves against an American aggression. I mean, this is pretty evident that they will be an easy prey for the Americans. Also, the economical situation in Cuba is very, very hard, and it will be very hard for them to be able to resist if the Americans really want to push forward with this plan and get their grip on the small state called Cuba. He didn't stop here. As I said, it was a full day for Donald Trump. He started to lash out at South Africa. He said that there is a genocide somehow in South Africa that he's the only one seeing. He's claiming that the South Africans, the black people in South Africa, are killing the white people. This, of course, is playing the racial card. He wants to divide South Africa, and he's very upset on South Africa because, as we remember, South Africa was the nation which had the courage to sue Israel for genocide, for the Gaza genocide in the International Criminal Courts. So, of course, the Americans sooner or later would have started to take a form of revenge against South Africa. And now probably we are seeing the beginning of a phase when the Americans will become more and more aggressive with South Africa. And also it's related to the fact that South Africa is one of the important founding members of BRICS. So it's a double reason. On one side, they want to take revenge on South Africa and to punish the South Africans for having the audacity, as Americans put it, to sue Israel for the Gaza genocide in the International Criminal Courts, and also to put a lot of pressure on them in order to weaken the emergent BRICS world. So it's a double game that Donald Trump is going to play against the South Africans. But South Africa is not alone. I mean, they are in the same boat with Iran, with China, with Russia, of course, and to a certain extent with India. But India, it's a more flexible player when it comes to BRICS and its own relations with the West, and especially with the United States. So it's another discussion that I will leave it for another day about BRICS and what is the current situation with BRICS and if it's going to push forward or not. And as I said, Donald Trump was very keen on showing himself as the ultimate winner in this war with Iran, and he wanted to portray the Iranians as the losing side, who now has only one solution: to agree to every statement that Trump makes, and to basically to capitulate. This is what Donald Trump is saying, and he also touched the nuclear subject. He was talking about the enriched uranium stockpile, saying that together with Iran, they are going to get this. They are going to dig the underground facilities, and they are going to get their hands on the enriched uranium, and this uranium will leave Iran and will go back to the United States. So he is completely deluded, but I would give him one good card, because he played a psychological game yesterday. Together with other American media outlets, which were pushing the idea that Iran is going to give back, or not to give back, to give to the Americans the enriched uranium in exchange for the American side unfreezing around $20 billion of Iranian assets from Western banks, which is nothing in the big scheme of things. I mean, $20 billion sounds theoretically as a big sum of money, but in practice it's almost nothing. And it would be a cheap price for the Americans to pay in order to get their hands on the enriched uranium. It will not be a smart thing for the Iranians to do if they really want to do this. But after a couple of hours, after Trump was doubling down on this idea that Iran more or less has capitulated and is going to provide the Americans with the enriched uranium, and they are agreeing not to have a nuclear program and that they will never enrich uranium again, we have the declaration of the spokesperson of the Iranian Foreign Ministry, Mr. Esmail Baghei, who said it clearly that enriched uranium is sacred to us as Iranian soil and will not be transferred anywhere under any circumstances. So this declaration should clean things up, should make everything clear that Iran is not willing to give up on the uranium, and also having the uranium inside Iran is a key strategic, even deterrence factor, because this uranium, if the situation worsens, and if the Americans will restart the war, and if this war will become worse for Iran, at a certain point they can use the enriched uranium to develop nuclear weapons and force the Americans and the Israelis to back down from from this aggression. So for now, at least it seems that Iran is not going to follow this self-suicidal path of giving up on the uranium, although there are pressures coming also from the Russians. Peskov, the spokesperson of Kremlin, he reiterated the fact that the Russians have made this proposal to the Iranian side of taking the uranium, the enriched uranium stockpile from Iran and sending it to Russia to have it kept for a period in Russia. But the Iranians seem to be very serious about not accepting this idea of giving up of the uranium, even if this doesn't mean to send it directly to the Americans, but just to keep it abroad, to keep it in Russia. Iran for now is not going to accept this. We have a declaration coming from Mr. Ebrahim Azizi, which is the head of the Iranian National Security Commission. He said the time has come to comply with the new maritime regime of the Strait of Hormuz. These regulations are determined by Iran, not by social media posts. Mahmoud Nabavian, which is a member of Iran's parliament, the Majlis, he said that the Iranian side has made a decision to allow commercial ships to pass in exchange for collecting fees, and we are doing that now. This completely debunks Trump's statements that the strait is completely open for free. No, it's not completely open. It's open in certain areas, following a certain path established by the Iranian Navy, and the ships which are allowed to cross the Strait of Hormuz need to pay an amount of money. They are paying tolls to the Iranians. This is the current situation of the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranians, they want to keep it like this. I mean, they want at least to gain from this war, this part of keeping and changing the status of the Strait of Hormuz in order to get money from the ships which are crossing the strait, money which will be used to rebuild what has been damaged and destroyed during the 40 plus days of war. Mr. Kalibaf, the speaker of the Iranian parliament, waited for Trump to finish his series of posts, and then he came with clarifications, saying that the president of the United States made no more than and no less than 7 claims in 1 hour, all of them being false. He said that the Americans did not win the war with lies, and they will certainly not get anywhere in negotiations, either by following the path of lying and of making certain statements just to put pressure on Iran. With the continuation of the blockade, the Strait of Hormuz will not remain open, Karibaf said. Passage through the strait will be conducted based on the designed route and with Iranian authorization. Exactly what I was saying. There is one way to cross the strait through the Iranian maritime waters, and that way it's completely controlled by the Iranian Navy, and everything that is crossing this path through the Strait of Hormuz, it's controlled by Iran, and Iran it's extracting tolls. They are receiving money from the ships which are crossing the strait. Whether the strait is open, Kalibaf said, or if it's going to be closed again, will be determined by the field and not by social media posts. This is a direct reference once again to the crazy posts of the American president. Karibaf continued saying that media warfare and engineering public opinion are an important part of the war, and the Iranian nation is not affected by these tricks. Read the real and accurate news of the negotiations in the recent interview of the foreign ministry spokesman. So what we know for sure now, after waiting for around 2 days to let the dust settle and the situation become clear, is that we have some level of indirect negotiations between the United States and Iran. These negotiations are mediated by the Pakistanis. The Americans want to push as much as possible, and they still have this mentality that they somehow won the war, although this is not what happened on the ground. They didn't win this war. They want to push as much as possible and have maximalist requirements from Iran. Iran, on the other side, has the control of the Strait of Hormuz, has a lot of cards. They can double down with another blockade, and with the help of the Ansarullah from Yemen, their allies, they can also close the Strait of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which would be an even worse situation for international economy. It would really spike the price of oil to uncontrolled values, more than $150. Also, if the hostilities are going to resume, Iran will continue to target key energetic facilities in the Gulf area, and they have a lot of stuff that they can destroy. Just a couple of drones and a couple of missiles can completely destroy the Saudi oil fields. From what I see, the Iranians have more cards to play at the negotiation table than the Americans have. The Americans can continue to play the nuclear card or the civilizational destruction card, meaning that they can still continue to threaten Iran, that if Iran doesn't reach a deal, the Americans are going to carpet bomb Iran and destroy Iran as a civilizational state, which is not feasible in my opinion. Yes, no one can deny that the Americans have an important military force and power projection, but for them to really destroy Iran like the Israelis destroyed Gaza, it's almost impossible unless they are going to resort to the nuclear weapons card. For now, Iran plays it smart, knows when to increase the pressure, knows when to make some sort of concessions, and it's playing the Americans. The Americans also have been forced by Iran to extend their own pressure on the Israelis to agree to a ceasefire in Lebanon, a ceasefire which is very fragile and that the Israelis are trying to a certain extent to violate. Even yesterday, they demolished some buildings and some villages on the border with Lebanon. So they continue to be unhinged and they continue to not respect what the Americans are saying, which is somehow good also for Iran because it exposes the Americans as being, to a certain extent, the puppets of the Israelis, and that the fact that the Americans are powerless. If they are powerless of controlling Israel, when controlling Israel, theoretically, it's in the interest of American foreign policy. This shows the Americans to other countries and to the international public opinion as a weak state, which is controlled by the Israeli lobby and by the Israeli government. The Americans, besides talking about Iran somehow capitulating and having some sort of a deal and preparing to get the uranium stockpile out of Iran, they are continuing to send troops in the Middle East, and also the USS Gerald Ford military warship has arrived yesterday in the Red Sea. So, as I was saying a couple of days ago, these negotiations are going to continue for a while. It's not clear if they will have a clear result, but these negotiations give the Americans the time they need to bring more troops in the region. It gives them time to resupply the Israelis with interceptor missiles and other type of weaponry, and gives them time to prepare for a potential ground operation, another ground operation, if they are so crazy to try it again, which would not be a smart move for the American side, especially after the total catastrophe and the total fiasco when they tried to reach the Isfahan nuclear facilities with some special forces, hundreds of special forces, under the disguise of having an operation to rescue the stranded fighter jet pilot whose plane has been shot down by the Iranians around 1 week ago. But this is not enough, and the Americans know that this is not enough. It's going to be very hard for them to push more than what they did until now. I don't think they can push more and more, and even if they are going to try to push forward with ground invasion, this will create more problems for them. I think this will be more destructive for the Americans than for the Iranians, because the Iranians are prepared for a ground invasion. The Americans clearly are not. And a ground invasion of Iran is not a ground invasion of Iraq. It's much harder, requires extensive logistics and military preparation. And the Americans, as the situation currently stands, they don't have the power to be successful if they want to follow this path of trying to invade basically Iran through a ground incursion. It's not going to work. But I'm sure that Trump and his administration are also preparing for this scenario. This morning we saw that the naval blockade imposed by the Americans was not so well received by the Iranians, which at the current hour have announced that because the Americans did not fulfill their obligations, the Strait of Hormuz has been closed again. So it didn't last too long. It lasted like 1 day since the strait was partially opened. But now it seems that Iran, seeing that the Americans are not fulfilling their own part of obligations, they have decided to close the strait again. Naval blockade will not go well with the Iranians, even if this naval blockade, from what experts are saying, is more of a sideshow. It's not a real naval blockade because a lot of ships have been able to cross in the past days and the Americans didn't try to stop them or to capture these vessels. For example, 5 tankers have transited through the strait, all of which were sanctioned by the United States. The American military ships are still far away from the strait, so their power projection is limited. And if they try to get closer and closer, they will enter the Iranian range of fire, and they will be sitting ducks for Iranian missiles and drones. And they for sure they don't want to do this. Even if Donald Trump doesn't care for the American soldiers and for the American Navy, but no one is suicidal when it comes to commanders and troops there. They will try as much as possible to keep the distance because it's safe and it's better for them. As long as the Americans have a maximalist approach to these negotiations, I think we are not going to see any positive result. From what I understand and from how things are unfolding and from how the situation develops, I think the Americans are playing a game. They want to control the price on the oil markets for a while, and they are preparing for the next step of the war. I think the Iranians understand this very well. They are playing the game of having 100% of what they want to achieve, or if not possible, they are going to return to war. They are not going to restart the hostilities. They are going to wait for the Americans to make the first step. But I'm sure that they have a lot of surprises prepared in the eventuality that the war is going to start again in the following weeks. It seems that Iranians are doubling down on their words and they are closing the Strait of Hormuz again, and we will see what the answer from the American side will be in the following hours. Until tomorrow, I'm wishing you all the best, and as I always say, if you like my content, like, follow, subscribe, and if you want me to touch on certain topics and to analyze other subjects, write me in the comment section of the YouTube channel. Until tomorrow, I'm wishing you all the best.